Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Nordenberg, Executive Director for the Center Region Council of Governments. I'll be convening the meeting for the next few minutes and leading things as we go along until we get to the election of officers. So to kick things off, could we all stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Scott, would you please do the roll?
Mr. Balachandran.
Here.
Mr. Herndon.
Here.
Mr. Kasav.
Here.
Ms. Krishnakudi.
Here.
Mr. Lipscomb. Mr. Myers.
Here.
Mr. Portney.
Here.
Mr. Bernier.
Here.
Mr. Best.
Is he here? He wasn't on. There he is.
Mr. Best.
Here. I don't think my microphone works.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Ms. Mariner. Mr. Reiner.
Here.
Mr. Heller. Here. Mr. Patterson. Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Ms. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Beck. Ms. Hartle.
Here.
Ms. Perkins.
Here.
Mr. Piper.
Here.
Mr. Cervello. Mr. Hameister.
Here.
Mr. Harden.
Here.
Mr. Lord.
Here.
Ms. Moriarty.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Abrams.
Here.
Ms. Hycheski. Mr. Magruder.
Here.
Ms. Robb.
Here.
And Ms. Whitman.
Here.
Thank you very much. Next up is public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on an item that is not already on the agenda? Looking around the room and up online, I don't see any hands raised or signals, so we will move on to introduction of newly elected officials, and we also have a couple of staff introductions for tonight as well. So first up, I'd invite Tracy Mariner to introduce herself, if you'd like to say hi from College Township. She returned it. Okay, next up from Ferguson Township, Mr. Patterson. Okay. Tammy Perkins from Half Moon Township.
Hi, Tammy Perkins. So I don't know what else you want to know, but longtime resident of Half Moon Township. So
Welcome, thank you. Tracy Moriarty from Harris Township.
Hi, I'm Tracy Moriarty.
Mariner.
Here we go. I am Duffy's Boulevard Tavern.
Thank you.
And she's the Bollesburg Village backpacker also. Leads the procession every Memorial Day from the diamond to the cemetery.
Outstanding. Well, welcome. Back to Tracy. Would you like to say hi?
Mariner?
Yes.
Sorry, I was having an audio problem.
Okay. Great. Well,
What was the question? Not closed, I had to go back out.
okay. Well, welcome to the meeting. Thank you. Mr. Patterson, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself, please?
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Ari Patterson. Hope all is well. Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors newly installed beginning of this month, and just want to say happy Monday to all, and look forward to doing the work of the COG. Over.
Great. Thank you very much. Susan Hycheski. Okay. She's from Patton Township. Next, we have 4 from State College Borough. Mr. Herndon.
Hi, Matt Herndon, State College Borough. Looking forward to working with y'all.
Mr. Kasav.
Evening, everyone. State College Borough Council. Happy to be on board with COG.
Thank you and welcome. Mr. Myers and Mr. Porter.
Evan Myers, I know most of you from being on this board before. Frank Harden mentioned that I missed a couple of meetings. It was a couple of years worth of meetings, but I'm glad to be back.
Josh Portney, State College Borough. I'm happy to be here. I served on Planning Commission and I did Center Region Planning Commission for a while. So I've been in this room before and I'm happy to not be on the general forum. So thank you guys.
Great. Well, welcome to all of you and look forward to working with you. Next up we have Jonathan. Do you want to say a few words or Sean, did you want to make an introduction?
We can do it during the agenda.
Great. So we have our new emergency management coordinator, and we'll hear more from him in a few minutes. Also, we have Melissa Kaufman, and I think Christy's going to make a quick introduction remarks about her change.
Can you hear me? Good evening. Christy Owens, Center Region Parks and Recreation Director. I want to welcome and introduce our new Assistant Director, Melissa Kaufman. She's standing over there on the side there. You'll see her as a familiar face, but just a little background on Melissa. She's been with this agency for 14 years. She was a supervisor at Millbrook Marsh, very instrumental in starting the Puddle Jumpers program, curating, creating wonderful activities for kids to learn through outdoor play, and has raised millions of dollars for this agency, over $3 million recently for the Spring Creek Education Building, and over $1 million in private contributions and grants. So just really wanted to acknowledge all the hard work she's put into this agency, and we love when we see employees within our agency who really want to advance and put forward their best effort to make a greater impact. So I look forward to working with Melissa. I think we've got some great things to come, and welcome, Melissa.
Outstanding. So next is the COG meeting etiquette reminders. For those of you who aren't familiar, the COG adopted guidelines for meeting etiquette and code of conduct in 2018. These items are in your packet tonight, as well as available online for any visitors and attendees to our meetings in the future. But it's important for us to remind ourselves and each other of the expectations for our meetings and civil behavior. So I'd like to remind ourselves of these items every January. We've done so in a number of committee meetings, so some of you have heard this several times in the past few weeks, but for those of you who haven't, we will go through this really quickly and entertain any comments or questions. The COG is committed to an environment in which all individuals are treated with respect and dignity, and we ask everyone to participate in these meetings in a professional atmosphere so that we conduct our meetings efficiently and that we provide examples of polite, civil, and respectful behavior. To that end, we ask everyone to respect the chair, treat everyone with courtesy and respect, try and keep our discussion focused on the agenda and the topic at hand. Please wait your turn and limit side conversations, especially in our hybrid environment like this. Side conversations in the room can be distracting to those participating remotely. We also ask everyone to respect decisions made by the general forum, even if you disagree with it or happen to miss a meeting and miss participating in the previous discussion. Please come prepared to our meetings, and that means helping Scott with registration in advance, and committees, if you could send an alternate if you're unable to attend. We do make heavy use of SharePoint, so if you have questions and are confused or need help with using SharePoint to prepare for our meetings, please contact any of our staff. I'm really happy to help with that. Please participate actively and keep an open mind, recognizing that there could be differences of opinion, so please remain objective and patient with the process and with one another. And finally, please watch your body language, both in person and remotely, because there can be silent messages that are sent asked everybody to understand that. So with that, we ask everybody to just be aware of these and consider those throughout the year as you participate in all of our meetings and events. Are there any questions before we move on? I don't see any, so we will jump ahead to some quick reminders of the COG Articles of Agreement and the provisions for this general forum. This group is responsible in accordance with the Articles of Agreement for a number of items that are printed in your packet, but I'll mention a few. We are annually going to install a chair and vice chair for the general forum, and that will happen in a few minutes. There's also a budget to be adopted each fiscal year, and that has happened for this year in November, but there'll be a lengthy budget process, so we ask for your patience in following that process and participating and keeping aware of the budget process. Any amendments to the Articles of Agreement would happen through the general forum, and we ask you to be aware of those and participate in those discussions as well. We'll talk later about the responsibility to appoint an executive director. If there are any changes to our personnel policies and classification plan, that's also a responsibility of this general forum. And finally, as it happened about 4 or 5 years ago, we also bring the decision to ratify the local emergency or disaster emergency declaration. Are there any comments or questions on the responsibilities of this group? I see no hands raised, so we'll move right along to the nomination for officers. The COG Articles of Agreement require that the general forum annually select a chair and vice chair. And as noted in your packet, we have a rotation, and the chair and vice chair automatically participate as the chair and vice chair of the executive committee. And those officers have been selected through the executive committee, and there's a recommendation in your packet, a motion approved by the executive committee at its January 16th meeting, was that the executive committee appoints Ron Cervello from Half Moon Township and as chair, and Jeremy Thompson from Ferguson Township as vice chair for the executive committee this year in accordance with the approved rotation. And so the recommendation from the executive committee is the motion that is in your packet for consideration at this point, that the general forum appoints Ron Cervello from Half Moon Township as chair and Jeremy Thompson from Ferguson Township as vice chair of the Senate Region Council of Governments. The term beginning tonight, January 2nd, 2024, and ending with the general forum's first meeting in January 2025. Is there anyone who would...
Motion to approve, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hamlister. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Myers. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I will ask for a vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, both of you, and thank you. Mr. Cervello, do you have any comments? I understand we're going to ask Jeremy to chair tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, can you hear me first of all?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I asked Jeremy if he could chair tonight because I had shoulder surgery on Thursday and I can't drive right now. I'm in a swimming, so I'm not feeling too great. So I really appreciate the fact that Jeremy was willing to.
And yes, in the absence that the chair just disappears, it's on me. So thank you so much. I congratulate Mr. Cervello from Half Moon Township on becoming chair this year. I also want to thank the Ferguson Township delegation for entrusting me in this position, and I look forward to working with all of you. Next up on the agenda, any new items anyone want to bring forward? And I will note there is, if you haven't heard, there is some changes on the procedure, new items on how that goes. So, not seeing any. We will move on to our consent agenda. Any items that anyone wishes to pull from the consent agenda?
Mr. Vice Chair, I would
Yes.
like to ask CA3 be removed from consent agenda. We have to substitute in one of the dates. So we'll talk about that in a moment, please.
Okay. Okay. So CA3 is pulled. Any others? All right. We will then move on to vote for the items on the consent agenda absent of CA3. Do I have a motion?
Move that we accept the items on consent agenda.
Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion by Ms. Whitman, seconded by Ms. Stevens of Ferguson Township. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right. Motion passes unanimously. We will move on to CA3.
Thank you. We inadvertently listed April 22nd, which conflicts with Passover in the packet. We would like to substitute April 29th. Scott had sent out a message. Hopefully you all had a chance, if you saw that, around dinner time to check your calendars. Hopefully Monday, April 29th would work instead of Monday, April 22nd for the general forum meeting then.
All right. And first, we'll take a motion.
I'll move.
Do we have a second?
A second.
We had a motion by Mr. Portney of the State College Borough, seconded by Mr. Highmeister of. Wait.
So it's going to be dead. It's going to be dead.
Yeah. It was the borough and Harris.
Anybody, go ahead.
Please follow side. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you to COG for accommodating that holiday. Thank you.
Right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed say no. Okay, motion passes unanimously. Next up, confirmation of the Alpha Fire Company Command Officer. For that one, the Fire Director is recognized.
Thank you. So annually, the fire department has elections of the volunteer officers, and then in January we then confirm those officers. A little unique case this year. For the past 6 years, Jason Troop from Patton Township was the fire chief. We have a term limit on our fire chief of 6 years, and so this year we elected a new chief. This year's chief was elected. It is Tony Perina from Ferguson Township. Tony was a previous assistant chief and has moved up to the position of chief. The two assistant chiefs for this year, Buck Harpster from Ferguson Township and Brian Bittner from Ferguson Township. The captains this year, Chris Williams from College Township, Randy Klauser from College Township, Mike Eckerode from State College Borough, Sven Peterson from Patton Township, and then the fire police captain is Ted Gabriel from Ferguson Township. So those were the elected command officers. There's also in your packet a list of the appointed fire police officers that need to be confirmed so that they can do traffic control with their duties in your municipalities as well. So there's a motion in your packet for appointment of these officers, and we're requesting that you do this.
All right. Can we have start with a motion?
So move.
Do we have second?
Second.
Right. Second by Perkins from Half Moon.
Can't vote.
Oh, that's right,
yes,
we have
you're right.
abstained, sorry. My apologies.
I saw a second from Mr. Heller of Ferguson Township. So yes, there is a note that Half Moon and Harris Township should abstain from this. Voting on this item, all those, is there any discussion? Yeah, first ask. All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, Emergency Management Coordinator. And
So I'll ask Jonathan to come forward. So I'm extremely excited that we were able to make a hire. Jonathan Risley started January 1st, so his first day was a day off. That's the best way to start a job, right? And as the Assistant Chief of Emergency Management for the Fire Protection Program, Jonathan will be asked to be appointed by this group as the Center Region Emergency Management Coordinator. He comes to us with a vast experience in not only the military, private sector, but a lot of emergency services experience. Was currently serving with us and has hazardous materials operations team. So I've gotten the chance, but prior to his hire, to work with Jonathan in the past. So extremely privileged to have Jonathan on the staff, and per our articles of agreement for emergency management, I need confirmation by this body so that we can move him forward to the county for appointment by the governor to be the local emergency management coordinator. So there's a motion in your package.
All right, and all municipalities should vote on this motion. I'll entertain the motion at this time.
So move. Mrs. Patty, I'll second.
Got a motion by Ms. Whitman, seconded by Ms. Stevens. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want to say anything?
Thank you. All right, next, Executive Director Recruitment and Screening Committee, and that will be presented by the Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few days ago, I announced I'll be retiring in June, and that memo is in the packet. Looking forward to that next chapter in my life with my wife. But in the meantime, there's a recommendation from the Executive Committee in your packet to form a recruitment and screening committee. We shared some information on a proposed recruitment process that was very similar to that was done 5 years ago when I was hired. And so, with the permission of the chair, I would like to ask our HR director to help me present some information so you're all aware of the recruitment process, which would include a recommendation that's in your packet for appointment of a member from each municipality to serve on the screening committee, recruitment screening committee, sorry, as well as a second motion regarding allocating funds for that process as determined necessary by this recruitment screening committee. So I will share my screen and turn things over to Becca Pettit, our HR officer, or excuse me, HR director.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Becca Pettit, HR Director. And as Eric mentioned, we were just through this process about 4 years ago. His predecessor was in his seat for 36 years. So when we did this 4 years ago, there were a lot of documents that we did not have in place because that person was in the position for so long. So it took us over a course of 5 quarters, starting in Q1 of 2019 with the notice of resignation and the creation of a job description. Believe it or not, that person had been in the role for so long that that didn't even exist. So that was just done 4 years ago. Q2, we recommended, the executive committee recommended the recruitment and screening committee be formed and the use of contingency funds. So that's the step that we're on here with you this evening. Q3 of 2019, the recruitment and screening committee developed a scope of work and decided that they'd like to work with a consultant, and they advertised a request for proposals for a consultant. In Q4 of 2019, they interviewed, thanks, Sarah. They interviewed consultants and selected a consultant to work with, and then that consultant interviewed key staff and stakeholders to create a profile of what they were looking for in the next executive director, and then advertise the position. And in the first quarter of 2020, they screened applications, conducted virtual interviews, and then first and second round interviews. There was an opportunity for the finalists to meet with the COG agency directors as well. Conducted background and reference checks, and negotiated an employment agreement, and then ultimately the executive committee recommended the candidate to the general forum. So there were a lot of things in that timeline over 5 quarters that we have in place that we didn't before. And some of those could be recycled and just dusted off. So the first is the recruitment process, right? We didn't have a process in place. We think that the process that we used last time was pretty thorough, and are recommending, that we pretty much do something similar again. The job description, again, is in place. A nice brochure, not only that outlines the position, but also the area, is already in place, and the salary range. We just conducted a class and comp study, and so we have a range in place. Last time we did this, we had to review that range, I think, twice to make sure that we were getting the right pool of qualified applicants for the position. And then, of course, the employment agreement was updated 4 years ago as well. So we think that we can condense the timeline. Eric's going to talk to you next about what's being proposed. It's still an aggressive approach to get somebody in the seat by June 1st. So he can go through some of that with you, but my message to this body would be not to delay, to keep the process moving forward.
So to recap, the recommendation is to follow a similar process from 2019 into 2020, and that includes formation of a recruitment and screening committee, which will be one representative from each municipality, either an elected official or municipal manager. The executive director is a non-voting member with assistance from the HR director, and then the committee be authorized to use contingency funds as necessary for the recruitment and hiring costs. So those motions are in the packet and come from the executive committee's discussion on the 16th. So I'm sure Becca and I would be happy to take any questions if there are any. I'll turn things back over to you, Mr. Chair.
All right. So we'll essentially entertain questions. Anyone having questions?
The second bullet, whether to determine a services of consult. If we don't do that, what's the alternative? And maybe Becca can answer part of that.
I didn't hear the
If we don't use a consultant, what process do we use?
I think we have HR, obviously, internally, that I would be willing to help with that. Even if we use a consultant, I would be willing to help with that. And I don't know that we would need a full-fledged consultant. They have like scaled back versions of recruitment, so maybe a smaller process where you would have access to their network and some bonuses like impartiality and things like that a consultant could bring to the table, but maybe on a smaller scale. Because we do have, like I said, the brochure and the different things in place that the consultant helped with last time that we really don't need necessarily this time.
They could be expensive.
They can be expensive.
Yeah.
Definitely. The pros and cons.
Yeah.
Right, but in addition, just to speak to the assistance that Becca can provide, Becca and I and other staff will certainly be involved and supportive of the process, but given the many other things that are on the agenda for HR and administration and the agency directors, external resources would be helpful, and make sure that we can continue some of the other things that are already outlined for the staff to be working on this next few months.
Thanks, Eric.
Mr. Courtney is recognized.
Yeah. So on that note, actually, how much is this sort of proposal going to cost us from the contingency fund, as is presented now, for the consultant?
I don't know how much that it would cost for the consultant, but there would be potentially more than just consulting fees that we would need to tap the contingency fund for. Like if we move somebody here, there would be maybe relocation costs, if there's overlap between a new person and Eric. So there's different things that the recruitment and screening committee may decide that they need to use that fund for.
Is there a stopgap like amount that you're going to hit or no?
So the contingency fund is right around 35,000 right now, so certainly any excess over that would need to come back to the executive committee, and I believe the budget was sufficient 4 years ago to cover all of those costs then. So my expectation is it will be well under the 35,000, in which case we need to come back through the finance committee and back to the general fund to approve if anything additional is needed.
Got it, thank you.
Ms. Whitman, Patton is recognized.
The last slide up
Yes.
on the screen from your presentation. Becca?
Yep.
Oh, okay, you're doing, I'm sorry. Thanks.
See,
Sorry. There we go.
Yeah.
Forward.
Okay, so this one, yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. Better you than me. Yes. So, who is going to approve the formation of the screening committee?
The motion in your packet would be to approve the screening committee be formed, and then each municipality would appoint
Okay.
their particular representation.
Okay. So discussion on the process takes place now.
Well,
Or-
the bulk of the process would be determined by the screening committee.
Okay.
What the general form is asked for is to authorize the committee be formed.
Okay.
As outlined there, and then to also authorize expenditure of the funds as it might be needed.
So my question actually concerns what's up on the screen right now, that the approved formation would be comprised of one representative from each municipality, an elected official, or the municipal manager. I see the advantage of having a combination of elected and staff, and this proposal would not necessarily give us that. So each municipality could respectively elect a manager or respectively elect an elected. So I'm just posing the question, if other people see a need for that, or if we go with that, can then the committee itself amend the process and request to include the missing element in the committee? People are not understanding me. Okay, I just wondered if we had to make a comment now, or if the committee itself would see to that.
If I could comment, this is the same exact process that we followed 4.5, 5 years ago.
Okay.
So each municipality decides who they want to appoint. There's all kinds of ways to do that. Some municipalities elect the person, some it's up to the chair to appoint, but however it's done, and it's either the manager, the township, or in the case of State College, the borough manager, or an elected. So each individual municipality decides who to appoint, and so there's 6 people, and so it's made up of a cross-section. Now, are you asking, is it possible that only managers get appointed or only elected officials? Sure, that's possible, but as I believe last time, it actually turned out to be 3 and 3.
Oh, okay.
So I would think that would be...
That would be my next question.
I would
That's
think it would
fine.
probably be something very similar. In fact, maybe some of the same people will get appointed if they're still around that were here last time. When we discussed this in the executive committee, we talked about maybe some of the processes, but we felt that it was important that the committee who gets appointed determines how they're going to proceed, rather than, I mean, certainly we can opine on what's going to happen, but if we start directing what they're going to do when we haven't even appointed them yet, that seems a little bit in the wrong way to approach
Okay,
it.
and I'm not familiar
Appoint the
with the
committee
process.
and then let them do their job and
Okay.
report back, which they'll have to do anyway.
I just see the benefit of having both elected and staff on that committee, and it sounds like it will turn out that way. Yeah. I think we have different perspectives, elected and staff, so that's just my comment.
Yes, Tracy. And I see your hand
How
up,
broad
Mr.
is the
Casab.
search?
How broad is the search? It would be a nationwide recruitment.
Is it prudent to have that broad of a search, given the time frame that we have? Is that normal, given the time frame we have?
For a position of this level, probably, but that would be for this body to decide, or the recruitment and screening committee to decide if they wanted to handle that differently. It is really hard, I will say, right now to recruit in local government in general. We see more people leaving the field than coming into the field. But, it's always hit or miss. You don't know what you're going to get until the advertisements run. So if we limit ourselves to local and we decide that we have to open it up to more or a wider range or broader range, then that will take us more time to achieve the application pool that you want.
Ms. Your questions answered?
Yes.
Okay, did want to skip ahead. Mr. Hart is recognized, and then we'll get to Mr. Casab.
Yeah. I don't know that you necessarily have to do a nationwide search, and I don't go with the idea that there's not enough applications out there. I want to remind everybody, Harris Township conducted a very successful manager search this summer, and without going nationally and hiring a firm, we ended up getting 30 now, mind you, 30 applications for our manager's position. So I'm not sold on having to go and pay a lot of money for a search thing. There's ways to do it, and if anybody wants, when we get on the committee, we'll be more than happy to share how we did that and how we did it without paying a lot of money.
Mr. Casab is recognized.
Thank you. Just to go back on what Betsy said, Borough State College, with the amount of rental properties that we have, bars, etc., I like the idea of an elected official, borough manager, and or planning and zoning.
Seems to be having some technical difficulties there.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, but I'll just repeat what I said. I just agree with Betsy that specifically with the Borough State College, with the amount of rental properties and ordinances regarding rental properties that we have in our bars, that we do include planning and zoning in the picking of this.
Must be
Right, staying on the line. All right, we'll recognize Ms. Perkins, and then we'll get to you, Mr. Cervello.
Just a quick question for clarity. You mentioned $35,000 for contingency funds. Is that just for HR purposes, the $35,000, or is the $35,000 with tax with something else?
That's the entire COG contingency budget, so.
Oh, it's the entire budget. Okay.
Last year, $5,000 was used for another purpose, but it had to be approved by the general fund prior to the, anything over $4,000 has to be approved by the general fund, so this would do that advance authorization in order to keep the process on track, similar to what we've done 4 years ago.
Mr. Cervello is recognized.
I just wanted to comment that I think for tonight we need to establish the screening and search committee, which I think should be necessarily limited to representative from each municipality, and then that screening and search committee can get advice and consent or advice from various other departments, other groups, other people, which necessarily has to happen. And then there's a process of selection that I think it's important to include those people that are, affected, that have to work with the COG. And but for tonight's purpose, I think it's important to at least establish. Thank you.
Cut out there towards the last sentence there, Ron.
Okay, I'll just try to recap that just to say that I think for tonight's purpose, it's important to establish the screening and search committee with a representative from each municipality. And then, as the committee does its work, it's going to be consulting others within the municipalities to refine the process and the selection. Thank you.
All right. The College Township Manager is recognized.
Hi, thank you for giving me an opportunity. Adam Brumbaugh, College Township Manager. I, along with Tom Fontaine, had served on the interview committee the last time around, and I believe that Mr. Wilson was the chair of COG when we last did the search. And if I recollect correctly, I believe that we had, very similar to what Mr. Cervello has described, we had a selection committee to review and initially screen the candidates, and then there was a second interview committee that actually conducted the interviews, the final interviews, and made some recommendations that the elected officials then took forward. And so it was kind of a two-step process. My only concern, the way that it was worded this evening, was that if you were only going to have a single elected official, that's a lot to do screening as well as interviewing. That's a lot of time. It's a big commitment. And there may be some value for consideration relative to having two separate groups the way that I believe that we conducted the last one. But I tend to agree with Mr. Cervello. The key here this evening is getting things moving, getting things started with the actual selection committee so that you can begin to screen those candidates.
That's correct. Thank you, Adam. There was multiple committees. The first was the Recruitment and Screening Committee. The consultant conducted the virtual interviews and screening and worked with that committee to do the first round in-person interviews. The second round in-person interviews was in front of the executive committee. And that same day, the final candidates met with the COG agency directors as well for an informal interview.
Mr. Bernier is recognized.
Thank you, Jeremy. I just wanted to note that I can, and I believe all of us remotely, are not having any problem at all with the audio on remote participants. I didn't have any problem hearing Kevin. I didn't have any problem hearing Ron. Just to note.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, I was, let's see, 2020 I was vice chair of however, I was our selected person for the initial screening committee, but then the following year, then I was also on the executive committee. So I went through the whole process now. And I got to say, it worked out really well. I don't think anybody should have any concerns. And it's not going to cost $35,000, that's for sure. And a consultant, for the limited, I mean, I'd highly recommend a consultant, but that's not my call until the committee's established and the committee discusses it. But it'll be a pretty minor fee, I think, for the consultant to do that.
All right. Mr. Myers.
Yes, I'd like to move the first motion here that the general form as recommended by the Executive Committee establish a COG Executive Director Recruitment and Screening Committee with one representative from each municipality, either elected or the municipal manager, and all the other things it says there as well.
Second.
Right. I had a motion by Mr. Myers of State College, seconded by Mr. Lord of Harris. Any further discussion? Mr. Patterson is recognized.
What is the purpose of the I guess making the committee name combined? Is it a search committee?
Essentially, yes. It was that was the name that was used when it was formed 5 years ago. So it was recruit and screen and handle that process and bring a recommendation to the executive committee and then ultimately to the general forum.
I appreciate that. So I think with Mr. Brumbaugh, he was saying they brought in some people. There were some other things that the search committee did, splitting some tasks out. So I would recommend, Mr. Myers, whether we do a friendly amendment or I can make a second motion to just change it to a search committee so that there's not this kind of general forum, dictating what that committee's doing. Obviously, they're doing the search and it's going to have some components to it. Maybe some consultants, maybe this, maybe that, but let that committee kind of decide the...
That's fine. I kind of think that's what it says now, but if you think that gives more clarity, I don't have any objection. I don't think the executive committee or the general forum is directing. We're creating the committee, and then each municipality appoints someone. Mm-hmm. And then that committee will obviously have to work with the general forum and the executive committee and report back as it goes along what the progress is. So I think that's the sense of what this motion is, and I think that's what you're saying. I think you're saying the same thing.
Oh yeah, it was calling it the.
You just want to change the name of what it's
from
called.
Recruiting and screening to search. That's it.
I have no objection. What's that?
Did he make a proposal? It was more of a, if we could amend
friendly
the record
amendment or
or call it
something?
search committee and then we don't do anything else in the motion. That's what the action.
Feels like a non-substantial amendment we could just do.
Yeah.
Right?
The second. I think you made the second.
Objection.
Mr. Cervello is recognized.
I just wanted to comment, I think we should just move on with the motion.
So we did have a
motion.
an amended motion. Should we vote on the amended motion?
Was it a formal amendment?
It feels, like I said, it feels
Suggested.
sort of just non-substantive, so it doesn't
Okay.
really
Just
need
want to
to
make
vote.
sure, Make sure I'm not skipping anything. I get it on. Any other discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Okay. And we do have another recommended motion in the agenda packet.
I'll move this one.
Right?
I'll move that the general forum, as recommended by the executive committee, authorize the search committee, if deemed necessary, to retain the services of a recruitment consultant to support the process to select the next COG, executive director, and so on and so forth. But I do want to also add the cap that, and it does say the contingency fund is the cap. No more money spent. Hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Portney. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. We got a motion by Mr. Portney of State College, seconded by Ms. Whitman of Patton. Any discussion? Mr. Heller is recognized.
I may, since this is the same process that we used previously, is it necessary to bring in a consultant, or do we just use what was done previously, where we've already had eyes on the process and what the consultant did, to move forward without a consultant?
Point of order, so that's up to the committee to decide
Yeah.
once we appoint the committee.
Yeah, it's my understanding the committee will decide on that. This just allows them that option. Mr. Patterson.
For those reasons, I do believe that we maybe wait to identify how much or what the money is that should be allocated. The committee kind of put together a budget and then let the group decide later. That would be my recommendation. So I'm not for it. So that's it.
The motion says, if deemed necessary, which I think responds to that, it's still the discretion of the committee to decide. So we have that offer in there.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Ms. Trainer's recommendation.
I believe that given the time constraints, that the motion as it stands makes sense right now in that it empowers the committee to make the decision about the funds to come from the contingency fund. So I think that, you know, we're dealing with a deadline and a time constraint. And I think empowering the committee makes sense.
I would just say that does make sense. Otherwise, you know, that could delay the search process, and we need to make sure this is moving along on schedule. Any further discussion? Seeing nothing further, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no.
No.
We do have a no from Mr. Patterson.
And Mr. Best.
And Mr. Best of College. Motion does still pass though. Next up, we have the university report, and for that we will recognize Mr. Morales of Penn State.
Hi, everybody. For those that don't know me, I was here last time, but I know there's a lot of new faces in the room. My name is Julian Morales. I represent Penn State in the Office of Government and Community Relations. So thank you for having me in. I just have a couple updates to share. Of course, the semester's started, albeit off to a slow start with the weather and stuff. So hopefully there's no ice tonight that will delay us any further, but everybody is back on campus. Some safety updates from our folks in physical plant. The university has updated all of our street signage on campus, and what this allows is that every building on campus actually has a street address. So for the case of emergency, 911 calls, things like that. Hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to find these locations. So again, the street signage has been updated. The signage on the building has not been, but most buildings have the signage, but these would be the street signs. So if you're on campus, if you notice that, that's what that is. A couple of things planning to open up in the summer and then in the fall. The Palmer Art Museum is due to open officially on June 1st, so we're really excited about that. There'll be a lot of celebrating going on around that grand opening date. Also, the Engineering West complex will open officially in the fall of 24. Faculty and staff will start moving into that building in the summer, and then it will officially be open for classes and hosting for students in the fall of 24. So we're excited about that. And then lastly, I am working with our folks, to hopefully come to the next meeting or the meeting after to provide an update on the Mercer Gap and the project that's taking place over there. Mike and Mark, I'm meeting with them here shortly to kind of develop a presentation of sorts to come to the meeting to update everybody on progress report of sorts. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Right. If nobody had any questions, we'll move on.
Any questions?
Mr. Magruder is recommending he has a question.
Thank you, and thanks, Mr. Morales, for that update. I'm aware that Penn State recently, I guess today, put out a sort of like strategic plan for the entire university and a lot of different domains. And I think what caught my attention was some alluding to potential budget cuts, sort of like hope for an increase in enrollment. I think around 10,000 or something like that I saw is projected and hoped for, as well as obviously then the need for particular staff and faculty to help support that increase in enrollment down the road. And so I'm aware that, you know, that influx of individuals potentially coming here to the State College community was pertaining to housing, pertaining to
We're back.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost
Now
you
we
for a
can hear
second.
Oh, Okay, yeah, so again, I'm aware of the strategic plan and some of the things that just sort of like came out, and hopeful that more clarity can be provided to, you know, the staff and elected officials here at the COG, understanding that that may have implications for our different municipalities.
Yeah,
So.
sure. Yeah, sure. So thank you for that. Yeah, the news came out today about 3 o'clock. A story was published on Penn State News. Full disclosure, I found out about it about 2 o'clock. So what I know is kind of what is in that article. But I am looking forward. I have shared some of that information locally, and I'm looking forward to any questions that you have, gathering that information and providing it to you. I apologize, I don't have, what I have is what was in that article as of right now. But I'm more than happy to take any questions, once you're able to read it, digest it. If you have questions for me, I'm more than happy to find those answers for you. But as of right now, I don't necessarily have anything more to add than what was already illustrated in that article that was released today. So I think a lot of it there'll be more, I mean, as of right now, there's probably more questions than answers, admittedly so, but we'll work to get the answers to those questions.
Thank you.
Okay, and see no further questions. Thank you. All right, we do not have a State College Area School District report tonight. Moving on, Whitehall Road Regional Park Project Coordinating Team report. Mr. Frank is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The project has entered the hibernation period for the winter. We're looking to finish up the remaining few construction items as soon as the weather cooperates. In the meanwhile, staff has been working on closing out grants, building permits, punch lists, and the land development plan. Still on track for a spring grand opening, but we got to get some various items on the construction schedule finished up. One note, it appears the fence installer has found the last bit of rock that the other contractors hadn't found, and that will impact the final number slightly. Pending any questions, sir.
See no questions. Mr. Patterson.
Are those managed?
Yes. They're managed. If you look in table 1 or table 4 in your packet, you'll see the current standing. Again, the newest item would be the potential of a rock cost for the fence installed. Good.
All right. If there's no further questions, we'll move on to the Executive Director's report.
Thank you. In your packet, we have the January activity report, which includes highlights and information for all of the agencies, and some of the agency directors are here if you have any questions about items in the activity report. Also, each January we prepare a list of accomplishments from the prior year and potential upcoming general forum agenda items and some highlights of activities that are coming up in each of the agencies, and so we'd be happy to address and answer any questions on those. I know a number of the COG committees have already heard some of these highlights and potential items that will be coming through the committee process as well. So all 3 of those items are in your packet, and I'll be happy to answer any questions now if there are any. Please let me know if there are any questions later on this week if you can cross any questions. So thank you very much.
Any questions? Agency Director reports. Any agency directors have any items they want to report on?
Not tonight.
Not seeing any. We'll move on to our authorities, boards, and committee reports. First up, I have the Executive Committee. I have nothing further to add unless Mr. Cervello, who I think was still on, wanted to add anything.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I do not have anything to add.
All right, just a second. We basically covered everything that made in the agenda.
Testing the system.
Finance Committee, Mr. Frank is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee welcomed 4 new members this year. We look forward to working with Ms. Perkins from Half Moon, Mr. Harden from Harris, Mr. Heller from Ferguson, and Ms. Robb from Patton. Your management team is myself and Ms. Krishna Kuti from the borough. She wants you to make sure that she knows she has 2 COG budget cycles under her belt. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. The Human Resources Committee, Mr. Magruder is recognized.
Nothing to add at this time.
All right. Parks Capital Committee, Mr. Best is recognized.
Nothing further than what's written.
All right. There's no questions. We'll move on to Public Safety Committee, Ms. Roth.
All I would like to say is welcome to the 2024 Public Safety Committee and welcome to Jonathan. Snow and all. Thank you.
All right. Facilities Committee, Mr. Bernier is recognized.
I'm getting there, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing to report beyond what's in the agenda, but since Rich noted the new members, I will note that we welcome Mr. Patterson from Ferguson, Mr. Hameiser from Harris, and someone else. Sorry. Anyways, we have 3 new members. Those are 2 of them.
Please.
Sorry.
All right. Would the 3rd member want to identify? If not, the Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee, Mr. Hameister.
Nothing further to report, sir.
All right. Moving on to now my former committee, the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee, Ms. Whitman.
I would like to acknowledge Jeremy Thompson, who's a former member
The Climate Action Sustainability, as he just announced, and also to welcome on board Matt Heller and I did write it down, Nigel.
Yes.
On the climate action. I believe that's it. And Patton and Half Moon, I believe, is still going to be Don Ann representing. Okay. That is. I do want to add, in addition to the very concise and meaty write-up in the agenda, that the refuse and I can never think of Shelley Motto's title, Refuse and Recycling Authority. She had a pre-proposal meeting on January 17th. I was able to attend that, and I wanted to point out that there were 3 callers who showed up for that meeting. It doesn't mean that we're going to get 3 bids. Some of you may know that for the last contract, we only had 1 bid, which, as you know, doesn't bode well for perhaps competitive prices. So I think it's a very good sign that we do have 3 haulers interested, and I'll point out that we'll have opening of bids on March 6th, that the Climate Action Sustainability Committee will then look at those bids at our meeting in March, and then at the General Forum meeting, March 25th, we will make a decision on those proposals. So it is coming up. We're making progress. Thank you. That's it.
All right. Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Whitman. I do miss you guys over there. The Parks and Recreation Governance Special Committee will be meeting this week, so they do not yet have a report to provide us. Shiloh Center Region Library Board, do we have a representative from, I believe I see the director online.
Yes, nothing additional to add to the report.
Thank you.
Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority, do you have a representative from there?
The director's here, but I don't think there are any additions to what's in there.
That will move us then on to other business. Was there any matters of record that staff would like to point out?
Yes, if I could just highlight a couple and draw your attention, everyone, to item D. On page 13, there's a reminder about the save the date for a COG Lunch and Learn. So please RSVP no later than day after tomorrow to Scott if you plan to attend that orientation session for the COG on Friday, February 2nd. Try to keep that to no more than 90 minutes and cover a lot of what you need to know about the COG. Also, draw your attention to item F. There were some recommendations that came out of the December Finance Committee meeting, and those we're making progress on. And finally, matter of record I, which carries over to the top of page 15, I wanted to just note all of the employees of COG, my coworkers who received various years of service awards at the December recognition dinner, and I think it's outstanding that we not only having new staff, but many staff that have been here upwards of 3 decades, really doing a super job for the COG, and so we just have a wonderful team, and so whoever the search committee selects and recommends to the general fund will have a wonderful team to be working with. So those are all of the highlights I wanted to point out, and any of the items in the rest of the packet, if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, go back to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. I believe Mr. Bernier has a question, and I do apologize if I had missed you.
No, it's Kevin. Kevin Kasab was the third member that I... That's it. I just wanted to know. He just unfortunately stepped away, so he didn't witness my...
Cut out there.
But Kevin heard it.
But it was Kevin. Any further questions on anything? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, we had a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you so much, folks.
Good night, everybody.